So our next question is how has the COVID adaptations gone for various groups, and what are the pros and cons of playing online versus tabletop? And John, you can take the first answer if you like.
This is one, just to let you know, we're going to kind of answer it a little more shortly here, but if you want, I think around episode 81 through like 90, we really explore a lot of dimensions to this question, because this is a very, very multi-dimensional question. So just to kind of sum up some of the pros and cons really quick. I find that the pros to an online experience are that I find it, for me, more immersive, because it's a lot easier for the dungeon master to pull up visuals and audio without needing to worry about like passing around the handout or making sure that you print with enough ink or anything like that, or that your your equipment cuts out, you know? So I find that it's actually easier to immerse myself in the experience. With online, I feel like it's easier to dispense information as well, that you're playing a lot less catch up of like, wait, what did that person just say? Oh, wait, they tried to share a secret, you know? Like, because you have a chat log, you have a running record of everything that's happening. Like, even if something happens where, you know, your power surges, so, you know, you don't quite hear something the right way, you can just read the chat log if you're playing that style, which is the one I prefer, right? You do have to type everything out, so it's going to be a slower experience. So if you're a little less patient with your with typing out and making sure you're really thinking through your responses, this is going to probably be a much more grating experience, because, you know, you just want the next thing to happen. I will say online, you're at the mercy of your connection speed. So if you do have faulty equipment, or you don't have the fastest internet, or there are constant cutouts, that is probably going to be a restriction to play. And you do lose your elements of acting. So I know a lot of players, one of the things they value is doing accents and voices and conveying the emotion of their character audibly. These are things that I find I actually like online play better. I like having it written out and everything. I can't speak highly enough about that. I know that's very opinionated, and I know that's like my opinion, and a lot of people are welcome to disagree with me. I've just found that my both DMing and playing have been much more enriching and much more satisfying, and I can look back on everything that happened because it's clearer and there's less misunderstanding. So even though it's a slower experience, it's a more impactful experience.
That's where I slide back into the pros and cons, because having to adapt into Roll20 has been highly influential in terms of making sure I have the right visuals. And before Roll20, I would at least like print things out and display them, and people could pick them up and look at them. When it comes to my peripherals, I would make physical objects that players would interact with, or I'd hand them a scroll, or I'd hand them a cigar, which is a spell thing, like basically a spell scroll. And then I know, and it's labeled, and they have like physical objects that they're interacting with, which for some of my players, that's huge because it is so acting oriented. They love emoting and being and saying things in voices, and it's in the moment. When you play on Roll20, you have to be patient. It's a lot of sort of stepping back and letting the text of the story flow, and you have to sort of curb the initial feeling of I need to say what I would need to say right now, because there's also a sound delay. Like if you do that too much, you start talking over each other and just become a noise and nobody gets anything. So if you're going to do it in an acting medium, you still have to wait, because there have to be structures in place so that we don't lose information. Also, tech issues exist. We had a ton of tech issues last night, and they slowed down play and they would interrupt flow. We still got our satisfying experience, but we are now used to the idea of, okay, we kind of pause these interactions now and we restart everything so that people can get back into it. But, oh man, I missed that whole interaction because my internet reset is really, really rough. Like, You sometimes people have to change computers. They have to change house locations. Their internet just decides to drop them. Roll20 decides to kick them out of the game. And whereas if you've set up the right protocols in the social contract of how the game is going to be run, when those tick issues present themselves, because we know they're going to be a certainty, you're going to have something go wrong. Instead of it being a game-breaking thing, it's just it's a minor inconvenience because you have procedures in place to get yourself back in, and then you go up the chat, you read what you missed, and now you're back. But you have to be okay with that. If that upsets your flow too much, then it's maybe not the setting for you. But I've learned so much about immersion and making sure I have the right visuals present, and making sure all my maps are preloaded in a way. So I already have the placements of at least the enemies, and reorganizing myself so I have the right folders and tokens to pull in at the right times, so that there's less waiting, because there's already so much waiting, has been truly informative and influential in just my storytelling experience across the board. COVID, Roll20, Discord, live or not.
For me, as a new DM, this is really where I came into my own style of being a DM and creating these stories for my players, because I started DMing with, I would say, I guess technically I started DMing with Tyranny of Dragons, which was online, but I wouldn't say I was doing very well. I really consider the starting point of my DMing career right before COVID-19, because I was running Curse of Strahd with you guys, Adam, and a couple other people, and that was all live. That was at the table, and I was really enjoying it. I thought it was going very well. I was surprised how much I wasn't reading off of my prepared scripts, quote unquote, and things like that, and just having that creative flow going with inspiring each other and figuring out how to improv these kinds of descriptions that I didn't even consider, because it's one thing to plan something out by yourself, it's another to actually bring it to the table and then have the players do something entirely different, look at things that don't matter, and it was really cool. But then COVID-19, so I moved all my stuff over to Roll20, and I was put under pressure to adapt how I was DMing and prepare scripts. Personally, this is how I do it: prepare scripts so that I can just read them and put them into the chat so everybody else can read them and remember what it says, because not everyone hears everything that you say as you're saying it. And that also inspired me to have backdrops. I didn't really have any backdrops at the table or anything. It was all just like there was a map when we were using our tokens, or not tokens, minis, and then there was also maybe like a couple of cool little images, but no like backdrops. And I think that with the online stuff with Roll20, it allows you to become more immersed when you have those backdrops, because it helps your theater of the mind kind of solidify what you're looking at. And that's what I really like about it.
Thank you so much for listening to some of our podcast highlights. This podcast is part of the Darkmoor Podcast Network. If you want to support the content creators, feel free to visit our Patreon. And please, game responsibly.